The death and apotheosis of Heracles is a mythological tale that recounts the final moments and subsequent events after the death of the great Greek hero, Heracles. Heracles was renowned for his incredible strength and numerous heroic feats. However, his life was not without tragedy. After completing his 12 labors, Heracles faced a series of misfortunes and sufferings, including the accidental murder of his wife Megara and their children, which was caused by a fit of madness sent by the goddess Hera, who harbored a deep resentment towards him. As a form of penance and purification for the crime he had committed, Heracles sought guidance from the Oracle of Delphi. The oracle instructed him to serve his cousin Eurystheus, the king who had imposed the 12 labors upon him, for a period of 12 years as recompense for their murders. After fulfilling this requirement, Heracles would be rewarded with immortality and a place among the gods. Following the completion of his servitude, Heracles was eager to ascend to Mount Olympus and join the gods. However, he faced a final challenge orchestrated by Hera. The goddess sent a vengeful centaur named Nessus to wreak havoc on Heracles and his wife. During their encounter, Heracles slew Nessus with arrows dipped in the venomous blood of the Hydra. Before dying, Nessus, in an act of deceit, convinced Deianira, wife of Hercules, that his blood contained a potent love potion that could rekindle Heracles' affections if she were to apply it to a garment. Unbeknownst to Deianira, the blood of the Hydra was tainted and possessed a deadly poison. Later, when Heracles donned the garment treated with Nessus' blood, the poison began to consume his flesh, causing him immense pain. Recognizing the severity of this position, Heracles built a funeral pyre on Mount Oeta, where he lay down to die. As the flames engulfed him, his mortal body was consumed, and his soul prepared for its journey to Mount Olympus. The story takes an unusual turn regarding the fate of Heracles' body. As the flames continued to burn, his close friend Philoctetes and his son Hylas were present at the pyre. Stricken with grief, they debated the appropriate course of action. Now, some versions of this myth claim that the gods themselves ordered the disciples to eat the remains of Heracles as a means of absorbing his divine essence and allowing his soul to ascend to Olympus. Heracles' son Hylas, driven by his desire to honor his father and do the will of his father and ensure his ascent to godhood, consumed a portion of the remains. The other disciples followed suit, partaking in the ritual consumption of Heracles' body. The act of consuming Heracles' flesh is known as the immolation or autochthonious banquet. It is believed to symbolize the assimilation of Heracles' divine power by his followers, thus allowing his spirit to be released and join the realm of the gods. The story of the death of Heracles and the subsequent consumption of his body by his disciples is a lesser known aspect of this myth. It emphasizes the hero's transition from mortality to immortality and the continuation of his divine legacy through his devoted followers. Hylas, the son of Heracles, was said to become the new Heracles, to continue to avenge his father and fulfill the will of his father in heaven. In Egyptian mythology, the story of how Horus avenged his father Osiris varies in different versions, but generally involves a series of conflicts with his uncle Set. The tale is a part of a larger Osiris myth, which centers around the death and resurrection of Osiris, the god of the dead and ruler of the underworld. According to the myth, Osiris was a rightful ruler of Egypt until Set, his jealous brother, desired the throne for himself. Set devised a treacherous plan and tricked Osiris into entering a coffin, which he then sealed and cast into the Nile River. Osiris drowned and went into Duat, the underworld, and became the first ruler of the Egyptian underworld. Meanwhile, Osiris's wife and sister Isis embarked on a quest to find and retrieve his body. She discovered the coffin in the city of Byblos, brought it back to Egypt, and hid it. However, Set learned of the recovery, and in a fit of rage, tore the body of Osiris into many pieces, scattering them throughout the land. Isis, determined to resurrect her husband, collected the dismembered body parts of Osiris and reassembled them using her magical powers. She then transformed into a bird, flew over the body of Osiris, caused him to briefly resurrect, and conceived their son, Horus. Horus grew up in secrecy, trained and protected by his mother Isis. As he matured, Horus sought to avenge his father's death and claim his rightful place as the ruler of Egypt. A series of battles ensued between Horus and Set. Horus showcased his strength, courage, and divine abilities. Horus and Set engaged in direct combat, assuming animal forms to gain an advantage. Horus, often depicted as a falcon, while Set a donkey. Horus eventually kills Set. Horus avenged and fulfilled the will of the Father in heaven, which is Duat, and Isis retrieved the body of Osiris and cremated him. Osiris's flesh and blood is ritually eaten by the initiates, who eat cakes and drink wine in hopes of joining Osiris in the afterlife. The myth of Horus avenging his father Osiris reflects the eternal struggle between order and chaos, as well as the cycles of life, death, and rebirth in Egyptian cosmology. It emphasizes the importance of maintaining Mat, the concept of harmony and balance within the kingdom. Through his victory over Set, Osiris restored order to Egypt and ensured the continuing kingship, symbolizing the triumph of righteousness over evil, in the same sense that Heracles' labors represent the cosmic cycle of suffering and perseverance. Heraclitus the grammarian wrote in his Homeric Problems, "I turn to Heracles. We must not suppose he attained such power in those days as a result of his physical strength. Rather, he was a man of intellect, an initiate in heavenly wisdom, who, as it were, shed on the philosophy which had been hidden in deep darkness." The most authoritative of the Stoics agree with this account. The boar which he overcame is the common incontinence of men. The Nemean lion is the indiscriminate rush towards improper goals. In the same way, by fettering irrational passions, he gave rise to the belief that he had fettered violent Cretan bull. He banished cowardice also from the world in the shape of the hind of Chaeronea. There was also another labor, too, not properly so called, in which he cleared out the mass of dung from the Augean stables. In other words, the foulness that disfigures humanity. The Stymphalian birds he scattered are the windy hopes that feed our lives. The many-headed hydra that he burned, as it were, with the fires of exhortation is pleasure, which begins to grow again as soon as it is cut out. Like Heracles and Horus, Jesus Christ suffers, takes on the sins of humanity, is begotten by God, triumphs over death, fulfills the will of the Father in heaven, and ascends to the right hand of the Father. His body is also ritually eaten for salvation. And Jesus ascending to the right hand of the Father is not only a specific place to ascend to, but it's a rather familiar place for the Son of God to end up. The story of Romulus ascending to the right hand of the Father and becoming Quirinus is a mythological tale from ancient Roman tradition. According to legend, Romulus was one of the twin brothers who founded the city of Rome. After the city's establishment, Romulus became its first king. However, his fate is surrounded by mystery, and different versions of the story exist. On one account, as recorded by the Roman historian Livy, he describes Romulus' sudden disappearance during a thunderstorm in the midst of a gathering of senators. In this version, it is believed that Romulus was taken up to heaven by his divine father, Jupiter, and was granted immortality. He is said to have transformed into the god Quirinus, becoming a deity in the Roman pantheon, associated with the city of Rome and its military prowess. The idea of descending to the right hand of the Father is a phrase that echoes the language and imagery used in Christian theology to describe Jesus' exaltation. In Christian tradition, Jesus is believed to have ascended to heaven and is seated at the right hand of God the Father, signifying his divine status and authority.